Hello and welcome back to the Demis Hellen channel. In this month's Trance Arpeggio video, we're going to be taking a look at more specifically the intro ARP, or an ARP sequence that we'd use in an intro. So typically you have your plucks and leads separate for your intro to the plucks and leads that you would use in your main drop and sort of like the breakdown area. So the format is going to be roughly the same as normal, easy to follow. I'm going to show you the notation and why I've picked that notation the best I can sort of describe, because most of the time it sounds good and I have a little bit of background knowledge on theory, so I always encourage you to look into theory. So let's get started by listening to what we're going to be recreating. And if you are a Patreon supporter, you do get earlier access to this video like all the other videos, but you also get access to the MIDI and the presets that have been used in this video. If you don't want to support on Patreon, you can buy these presets as part of my Serum Trance Essentials 2-pack, which is on screen right now, and you can get them all there. Okay, so there we are. That is what we're going to be recreating. So we're not going to look at how that's made. There's plenty of videos that we can go through where we look at layering and things like that, but we're actually looking at the MIDI for this one. So I'm going to copy the MIDI over to here. Let's just loop this region over here, and I'm going to delete it so we've got the same loopable region. So we're working in F sharp major for this one, so it has a little bit more of a serious vibe to it, whereas if you use a minor key, which is very typical of trance, you'll get a little bit more emotion driving through it. But if you want that sort of really serious, harder sound, then major keys are always going to work a little bit better for that, but F sharp major always seems to be quite a nice place for me to start for that sort of track. Okay, so I'm just going to get this centered up a little bit, and we're going to start on F. So it's one note below the root note, and I'll explain that in a second. It's just where I started. So to explain it, I'm still in the right key, but I'm not starting on the root note for this key. So that's the starting point there. So let's just zoom in, and we're just going to focus on one bar because it repeats this particular intro pluck. So we're looking for something that has energy and sort of hints at what's to come. So obviously we've got no context of any melody that's coming after, but this is a good way to start generating ideas as well for your main melody, your main hook for the track. And with that, I can add a couple of notes. So I'm actually going to start on the beat, and then I'm going to go off the beat, so in between two beats like you would do with an offbeat bass, and then I'm going to have a note rolling down to that root. So just so you can hear how the sort of like seriousness comes across of that melody. So you can hear them two notes really fit well. Even if we change that to there, it's going to sound a little bit more lighthearted. So I like it to be a little bit closer together. Sometimes I do like to go with the half steps. So we mentioned this quite a lot. So if we went to here, these half steps, sometimes these work really well, but in this case, it didn't sound right. Maybe somewhere in a different context it would, but for now, that is how and why I use those two notes. So the next part is really simple. I'm going to mimic what's here, but with less notes. So I'm just going to draw the two notes in and then explain what's going on. So these two notes are actually copying the first two beats, and they're going to be applied to the second two with notes missing. So you can see that is the second 16th in 4 for that beat, and that is the second 16th. And then the next beat along is on the beat, and you can see that is on the beat. And then I'm just going to finish this off with an off beat, but we're actually going to use F, so it kind of loops back round like that. So we've got the main elements of our track, but obviously it's not in context. We can put the clicker on. So some of you might be actually happy with that, and then use the bass line on top of that. So if we was to copy over our kick for context, So there's one thing that I'm not going to go through, which is velocity sensitivity. Now, some of the presets are in my pack and some are not, but you can work with velocities there to control the volume level of some notes, so you get a little bit more of a texture coming through with the sound. Instead of having to rely on third-party effects to do it for you, you can actually get quite a nice drive out of things by doing different velocity levels. But we're just focusing on the melody in this video, and we're going to look at adding these lower notes in. So we're not actually on the root note for the bass either at this point, because it kind of starts high and works its way down to the low. That's how the melody in my head would work. So instead of starting on the root note, we're starting above the root note to sort of give it a bit of elevation, and then it works its way down into that root note. So we're going to start on this A sharp here, and I'm just going to fill in the gaps. Standard procedure on this channel. It's always a good place to start, and that is our lead. So I'm just going to mute or solo this lead for now. So to add a little bit more energy, I didn't do this in the actual original demo. We can actually shorten these notes. I'm going to hit J to turn off quantize, just make them a little bit shorter so we get a little bit more syncopation out of it. And we can do the same with the notes. Again, like velocity levels, giving different levels of how much volume's coming through for each note. We can do the same for this. We can make a few shorter, keep a few longer. Something like that. It doesn't have to be a lot. We seem to have 2 notes underlap there. Let's just get rid of that one. So we can have something like that. And it just gives it a lot more drive. It's just got a chunkiness to it now, and that sounds quite nice. So I'm going to copy that over 4 bars. And let's have a listen to that in context with some bass. We've already got the kick, so we don't need that to come through. So I'm just going to turn up the delay mix back up on this one. So for the people that are wondering, pluck, overheat, and it's not renamed this one. So that makes lead and Juno Paradise here on the bottom, and then we have pluck, overheat on the top. So they're the 2 leads that I've used. You can use more if you want. I just wanted to demonstrate a couple of sounds from the pack. The basses are also from that pack as well. They won't come with free with the Patreon, but if you want those basses, you can buy them in the pack on my website, link in the description as usual. So with that done, I just want to show you a second variation, something that we can do that just adds a little bit extra into this. Now you can see we've got a lot of repetition. We might want to add a little bit of flavour in there. Not too much, just a little bit to just sway away from being sort of repetitive round in a circle. So I'll start by concentrating on this final section here. Let's zoom in. And this F, I think I'm going to drop it to the next note in the key. So obviously it's not going to be here. It's going to be here, which is a D sharp. So you can see it just gives it a nice little cycle pattern there to just take that monotony away. And as usual, I always encourage you to sort of change up the notation, change up how it flows, so you make it your own. Don't just copy this and use it, understand it, and then manipulate it. So there's so many different variations that we can come up with for this. But let's just say transpose these down, but have these here and that one there. Let's have a listen to this on a loop. You get a totally different vibe from it. And maybe starting on the root note here. can see we can create so many different variations, and all I did is transposed a few notes down. The ones that were still out of key, just put them into key, and yeah, it's sort of like the world is your oyster. You can just experiment till you hit that mark, but having a bit of theory behind you as well is going to help you understand a lot more with the sort of compositional sort of stuff. I've got a bit of music theory behind me. I'm not fully fluent in music theory, and that is very apparent in a lot of my videos, but it's more about feeling the music. Especially with trance, you've got to feel some drive, some emotion in there, and that is how we sort of move forward. So one last thing, I just want to give you a preview to a third idea that I had here with a bit of moving bass for the intro section. And if you want the MIDI for this, you can get this on Patreon. This is available on there if you want to download it. I really do like that one. That's got a nice little edge to it. So if you do want that one, that is available on Patreon. The bass MIDI is also there if you want to grab that. So there we are. That's another free Trance Arpeggio that you can use in your tracks. I encourage you to change it up and make it your own and tweak it yourself and change the key. You could make it in A minor if you wanted to and get a little bit more of a softer feeling to it, but we're going for a bit more of a drive in this one with the F sharp major. So with that said, you know exactly what to do if you liked and enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. And with that said, I will see you all in the next video. Take care.